Uprising, Chapter 22, Bella. Bella and Yetta were walking home from work. They'd been back at the Triangle for a week now, and Bella was still rediscovering the twinges and aches that went along with hunching over a sewing machine all day. She stretched, twisting her head this way and that, raising and lowering her shoulders. This brought a puff of air up her skirt, but for once it didn't seem unbearably cold. "I think spring is coming," Bella said. "Can you feel it?" She held out her hand experimentally. A snowflake immediately landed on her outstretched palm. "I think spring's still a long way off," Yetta said, kicking at the slush on the sidewalk. Yetta had been in a bad mood ever since the strike ended, ever since Rahel's wedding, ever since she started back to work. Bella had tried again and again and again to cheer her up, and failed each time. Suddenly Bella heard a screech of brakes out in the street. That sound reminded her of the worst morning of her life. So she didn't bother looking up until she heard someone screaming, "Bella, Yetta, wait for me!" It was Jane, the rich girl who'd rescued Bella that awful morning. She came rushing toward them through traffic, prompting honking horns and more screeching brakes. She was wearing one of her usual fancy frilly dresses, and her beautiful gold ring gleamed even in the weak winter light. But she looked crazy, wild-eyed, wild-haired, coatless, hatless, and dragging a gray blanket behind her through the snow. "Where are your picket signs?" she yelled. "I came to help you with your strike. I'll stand with you every day on the picket line. I will, if I can. If I can't give money, I will do what I can. And if I'm arrested, well, fine. That would serve my father right." She was sobbing or gasping for air. Bella couldn't really tell which. In New York, Bella had discovered people rarely moved out of the way for anyone else, but the crowd on the sidewalk moved out of the way for Jane, as if they were all glad she wasn't yelling at them. Then Jane was right in front of Bella and Yetta, blocking their path. Yetta finally replied in a flat voice, "The strike's over. Go home." Jane froze in her tracks. "What? It can't be. I've been watching the Times every day." "The Times didn't even bother writing about us when the strike ended," Yetta said, and Bella could barely hear the suppressed rage in her voice. "The Call did. The Forward did. Do you want to know what the Forward wrote about, Triangle? With blood, this name will be written in the history of the American workers' movement, and with feeling will the history recall the names of the strikers, of this shop, of the crusaders, and yet the factory can reopen, just like the strike never happened, and do business with stores all over the country. Who would do business with criminals like that?" "My father would," Jane whispered. "My father is an evil man, and I never knew it until your strike. It's all wrong. Everything I have was bought with blood. I can't go back. I can't." "How can your strike be over? The last part was a wail." For a moment, Bella feared that Jane would just fall over right there in the snow. She reached out a hand to steady the other girl. "You ran away from home?" Yetta asked. "For our strike?" Something like surprise crept over Jane's face. "Why, yes, I did, I suppose," she said. "That's what it's called, running away from home." "Where will you go?" Bella asked. Jane turned to Bella in amazement. "Bella, you can speak English now," she marveled. "I learned it in the strike," Bella said. "Some, but you—" "Go where?" Jane slumped against the building behind her. "I don't know," she admitted. For a moment, Bella forgot that Jane was a rich girl. She forgot that Jane lived in a huge mansion with marble floors and puffy beds and servants waiting on her hand and foot. She only remembered what it was like to be alone and afraid, cut off from family, betrayed. "You come home with us," Jane told her. She told Jane. The end.